Amid the economic malaise in Afghanistan, there's one market raking in cash, and that's the opium trade. The UN has reported a record opium harvest in the country for the 5th year running, fueling trade worth up to $2.7 billion annually. Now, over 100,000 Afghans are involved in growing and selling opium, with local power brokers and drug traffickers taking a big chunk of the profits. Now, for many farmers, growing opium is the only way to make ends meet. DW correspondent Nick Connolly met some of them.
These are definitely not scenes Afghanistan's new Taliban rulers want the outside world to see. Opium being smoked and sold in broad daylight. This bridge has long been home to Kabul's best-known community of drug users. But now its members are starting to disappear, rounded up nightly by Taliban patrols and taken to forcible treatment centres.
They come and beat us up. If they catch you, you're sure to get a beating. They tell us to stop using drugs and change our ways. And they go after the dealers.
After years of earning protection money from the illegal drug trade while fighting their insurgency against Afghanistan's Western-backed government, the Taliban now say they want to put an end to the cultivation and use of what is, by most estimates, the country's most valuable export. This at a time of extreme stress for the country's farmers. Drought, plummeting consumer demand and border closures have seen their incomes dwindle. The one crop still performing for these farmers is the opium poppy. Here in Kandahar province, it's sold openly alongside the farmers' other produce. The only thing the Taliban announcement changed, these farmers tell us, was to drive opium prices up, at a time when prices for other crops are collapsing.
I just harvested onions and couldn't even sell them for 20 cents a sack. We know this is an illegal crop and it's not right. These are illegal drugs and we know that. But what else can we do?
With Afghanistan's land borders largely shut for legal exports, entire harvests of pomegranates and other crops have rotted or been sold for a pittance, while smuggling routes for opium and cannabis have stayed open. This farmer lost his leg to a Soviet landmine as a child. More recently, his village saw repeated American bombing raids targeting Taliban insurgents. They, in turn, brought their own improvised mines, leaving some fields too dangerous to cultivate. His fields, he tells us, are too dry for most crops this year, even for opium poppies. So he's planted cannabis instead.
Apart from the leaves which we sell, we also get the seeds to feed our chickens and the stems to use for straw. It gives us 3 harvests in one and doesn't go bad in storage like onions or corn.
Margins here are tight even at the best of times. Right now, he's struggling to find the 20 euros per month he needs to send one of his sons to school. Money he has no chance of making with legal crops.
If the international community was helping us, we wouldn't be growing cannabis or opium poppies. Of course, we'd rather grow legal crops. We do the labour and get the blame, but the big profits end up with the foreign smugglers.
But for now, there's little prospect of international aid returning in anything like the volume seen under the previous government. Without it, Afghanistan's economy looks set to suffer for the foreseeable future, opening the way for more poppies and more cannabis across these fields, and more narcotics on the streets of Afghanistan's neighbours.
I'm joined now by Angela May. She is from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, based in Vienna. Angela, thank you for joining us. Afghanistan faces 2 major problems here: drug use and drug production. How big a problem is this for the Afghan society?
Well, if we look at the opiate use, so it means the use of heroin and opium, this is estimated to be among the highest in the world. And due to of course, the supply that they have, but also due to the continued stress and conflict situation that the population has been facing for the last decades, that has created a lot of also mental health problems like post-traumatic stress disorders. And these are all factors that we all know are related to drug use and particularly drug use dependence. And in a country where not only the drug use is very high. The treatment provision and supply is also very low. In our last survey, we saw that only 10% of the people who are dependent on drugs can have access to the treatment. And so these are also the problem not only on the use, but also the lack of basic services and treatment for drug use. In terms of production, also is Afghanistan produces 85% of all the supply of opiates around the world, and supply 80% of the people who use opiates around the world. And so clearly has the biggest, again, also problem of production. But why is this a problem for the Afghan people?
And
yes.
Angela, just going to come in there just to ask you, what's the UN doing to help people in Afghanistan, both the producers, like we saw in our report there, and the consumers?
Well, it is addressing both issues that we were discussing, the production and the use. So we have been helping farmers to find alternatives, alternatives that can help really, if you want a healthy economy to grow, because the drug economy distorts the resource allocation. And so you have that only few can benefit a lot, but the rest of the population actually gets poorer. So we have been helping communities to find these alternatives. And from the use side is also helping communities to see how to treat drug use disorder with science-based treatment services.
Okay, and very quickly, how can the world help? Because this is not just a problem for Afghanistan.
Yeah, there is no country in the world alone can solve the problem of drugs, and Afghanistan, of course, also. And so the international community is committed, and we are meeting here today also in Vienna to discuss with countries in the region and beyond on how to enhance and find the unity of the international community to support Afghanistan and the region to reduce the trafficking, but also to see how we need to address both production and demand together.
Okay.
And the big demand is also outside Afghanistan.
All right, Angela May of the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, thank you. We'll have to leave it there for now.